All right, our topic for this panel of distinguished presenters is identifying attributes of developing and sustaining successful partnerships and collaboration. And again, I'm Paul Bradley. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees for Keuka College. And indeed, even, I'll try not to talk too much, but may even know something about this because many decades ago I wrote a dissertation called Academic Consortium Effectiveness and Investigation of Criteria. And an academic consortium is a voluntary association of institutions that join together to do those things that they believe they can do better together than they can do alone. And that was the subject of my my doctoral research. And what I'm about to do, I'm going to introduce everybody first here. We've got a little less than an hour and several panelists, so we don't have a lot of time. So I'll introduce people, and then we will have each of them offer some thoughts on a particular subject, and then we can open it up. We can open it up on the panel. We can open it up to the floor as to how you want to proceed. But this morning I introduced Max Dumoulin. You remember, the Director of Marketing for the Academic Segment in Elsevier BV in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. To my right is Tan Sri Dato Professor Dr. Syed Jalaluddin. He's the chair of Bank Rakyat, but prior to this role, he has 30 years in academia with a doctorate from the University of London, held many positions, retired as Vice Chancellor of University Putra, Malaysia, and has a number of special honors, including being named National Science Laureate and National Academician. To his right is Dr. Li Wei Chen, who's a professor of medicine at the University of Rochester and director of the Strong Memorial Hospital Heart Failure and Transplantation program. He did his undergraduate study at the University of Missouri in Kansas City, did his later studies at the University of Washington out in Seattle. To my two down to my left is Adam Sitkoff. Adam is Executive Director of the American Chamber of Commerce in Hanoi, Vietnam, as well as Executive Director of the Asia Pacific Council of American Chambers of Commerce. He co-founded a small company, which at least was small when he co-founded it, called InfoHaze.com, which is a San Francisco startup to provide internet security. Bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin, an MBA from the University of Hawaii, which is kind of like going from the ridiculous to the sublime, I guess. But it certainly didn't work on your surfing in Lake Mendota. So to his left is Dr. Gary Smith, and Gary is the Vice President for Professional Studies at Keuka College, and essentially the Vice President for all of the non-traditional, at least for the Keuka setting, programs that we have, the international programs, the adult programs, the online programs. He earned an MBA just down the road here at SUNY Buffalo, and more recently a PhD from St. John Fisher in Rochester. And to my immediate left is Felicia Zimmerman. And Felicia's parlayed a degree at Stanford to a career in aviation, living in Dubai in the Middle East, and has come back to this country to live in Rochester and leads a global business with Xerox, and at the same time is an entrepreneur with her own company. A thing of particular interest, however, is that Felicia was an Olympic fencer. She appeared in 2 Olympics. In fact, was the youngest winner ever in I'm going to get this wrong, the Junior World Cup. Junior World Cup, my apologies on that. So if anyone acts up here, Felicia will leap over the dais. She will grab a saber and carve a Z in your chest. a Z for Zimmerman. But, and with that, I will start with Felicia. And let me just throw out a question to start us here. And I'd like, this is for everyone, but we'll start with Felicia. Please share an experience with a successful cooperative or collaboration effort or efforts. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you. Welcome, everyone. So I have a lot of examples of collaboration. So through work, I own a business with my sister, and there's a lot of collaboration there when you have to work with siblings and family members in a business. However, I think the most important example I can take is from sports because of my 20 plus years in the sport of fencing and 2 Olympic Games. Because there the competition is at the highest degree. So we have in fencing individual and team competitions, but only 3 people can make the Olympic team. And in that case, that year in 1996, we had the top 8 women in the United States all training together for 3 positions, and 4 of us lived together in one house. And 3 out of the 4 of us actually made the team. And what we found is that we needed to look beyond. We all had individual goals that we wanted to achieve, of course. But what was important was the group's goal. What are we trying to do, not just today, but tomorrow? What are we setting an example for? And if you can keep your eye on that, everyone together works in a way that helps everyone else. So not only was I able to elevate my own game, but my teammates around me elevated their game. We became one of the top 5 fencing teams in women's foil during that year, and that had never been achieved before through U.S. fencing. So, I mean, we came from the very bottom, being the laughing stock of fencing around the world, to becoming top 5 and actually winning one of the World Cup team events. So it was just an amazing experience that everyone could focus on the one goal. What are we going to do today? What are we going to do tomorrow? And bring those people along. It wasn't just us, it was beyond us. So thinking big and thinking globally, and that is what really helped propel each of us to get to a level of excellence.
Actually, I'm going to go with Dr. Jalalunya next. Thoughts on particular experience or experiences with successful cooperation?
Well, you know, the academia has really very closely linked to professional bodies, you know. When I was a young, we call it American professor in the university, I might be in the early 30s, you know. I was then the head of the animal science department at the veterinary college, you know. So, in Asia and Australia, there was no fraternity, no bodies, you know, that link animal and veterinary scientists, you know, as a body. You know. So I founded the Association of Animal Protection Societies of Asia and Australia. I became the first president. And this is illustrated that, you know, you need to get people to sit together, you know, across Asia, Australia. And today, that body is a very successful body, and I think the meeting is on biannual basis and it rotates throughout Asia and Australasia. So I just one of an example how we can break linkages, you know, between different nations and between different culture. Yeah. Nevertheless, although it is not related specifically to universities, but it has got the indirect relationship because it relates to research, to science, advancement of knowledge in a particular discipline. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Dr. Shen?
Good afternoon, and so it's good to follow lunch. I don't have the perspective of the international educational aspect that all of you have. I started a transplant and mechanical heart program in Rochester, New York, just an hour and a half away, about 10 years ago. And we went from having 0 patients to a now established program. And I think what I can share in terms of partnership or interacted is how we develop that. And we learned very early on that in our region in upstate New York, compared to, say, for example, New York City, patients with heart failure, which is the end stage of heart disease, were being allowed to die, not getting offered care that was fairly universally accepted because of many different reasons, geography, location. And we were doing heart transplants at a rate of at least a third only of what, for example, in downstate New York. And I think our region said, this is not right, and we wanted to make it possible to offer this life-saving therapy to people in the upstate area. But we had to overcome a lot of issues with competition and referral patterns and a lot of things that you would think people would overcome for the betterment of individuals in our region. But it turned out that we had to go basically place to place and work with the referring hospitals and physicians in our region and other cities and all throughout upstate New York. And in the end, it turned out that really, even though physicians, doctors, the practices, the hospitals had the interest of patients at heart, we had to kind of show them how it could be done. And it had to be a win-win. That's a theme that's brought up quite often today, that the stakeholders involved have to understand the benefits to all sides. And when it's a win-win, it's good for humanity, as has been said before. So we work very hard at that, and I think it's a continuing process. And I take that experience, forward to everything that we do.
All right, Adam?
Thank you. Well, I live in Vietnam, which I think many of my friends from around Southeast Asia here know is one of the most exciting emerging marketplaces in the world. But it hasn't been without its challenges. 25 years ago today, you had a country that was a fully centrally planned economy, and now it's been on a very quick path into becoming a market economy. And they want to become a knowledge-based economy. And so at the same time that you have investment and multinational companies flowing into a place like Vietnam, you have a very common complaint, which is that their workers and engineers don't have the type of skills that the companies are really looking for. And so in terms of a collaborative effort, one of the things that my organization, the American Chamber of Commerce, is doing there, in partnership with the U.S. government, the Vietnamese government, and Vietnamese universities, and a number of American schools and companies, is a program called HEAP, which is the Higher Engineering Educational Alliance Program. And what that does is that is taking American universities and American companies to bring the rectors and some of the top folks from Vietnamese universities to the United States to try to work on things like curriculum development and changing how it's a teach the teachers, to change how people are taught, so that at the end we have people coming out of these schools that are more creative, more bold, know how to problem solve and ask the right questions. And this is a relatively new program, but it's one that's proven to be a very successful partnership between business, academia, and government together. Thank you.
All right. And Max?
Thank you, Stu. Collaboration and cooperation, I think the best example is probably in every university where research is done. It's the researchers themselves that find partners all over the world. They go to conferences and meet each other and do research with other people. I think that's probably the most exciting thing. Of course, it's important to sign memorandum of understanding, just like the one that will be signed this evening. It's very important for countries and universities to make a joint effort to work together. But I think very often the most inspirational collaboration that you may find is between researchers who find people that have the same interest at conferences. And we see that, of course, in the way we deal with people. We can sometimes show them that there is within the university more collaboration than people had thought of beforehand. And I think that's a beautiful thing that can be shown. And I think there's a lot of strength in these researchers, and a lot of good comes out of it. I think that's also been proven. So I would just my example would be anonymous researcher that we find partners from all over the world by just attending conferences, going on the internet, and partnering with people that have the same interest, despite maybe having a completely different culture. So that would be my example.
All right. Gary?
As I think about the successful aspects of collaboration, I have to think about the example of high-performing teams. And if you look at any high-performing team in no matter what sector, it's not accidental. So the team members come to that task with some very specific goals and preparation. And really at the foundation, I think as you look at successful collaborations, I would ask or suggest that your organizations first start with the organization itself and the mission statement. And I know at Keuka College, we went through an exercise over the last 10 years of reviewing our mission statement and making sure that our core mission statement facilitated collaboration, especially international collaboration, so that as members of the organization went back to the guiding principles of our organization, the mission statement, the value statement, they could find language that supported these initiatives in international collaboration. The other important element is finding champions within your organization who have the knowledge, the disposition, the motivation to undertake these initiatives, because they are extremely difficult from a variety of perspectives. And the least of which, all of you know who've traveled here from the other side of the world for this conference, that the travel and time differences alone can be a major barrier to successful collaboration. So finding individuals within your organization who are supportive and will champion these kinds of collaboration, and then laying the foundation so that as they try to motivate their colleagues to join those causes, the fundamental statements of the organization, the mission and value statements, support that and guide them as they move forward.
Now, as I listen, I'm hearing a series of criteria unfold. The notion of a strategic intent or a vision, strategic intent being a statement of desirable end results that capture the imagination. And Dr. Chen, if I could maybe fill in a couple of cracks in what you were saying, I'm hearing you suggest that when you started the heart transplant unit, if there was a vision, it was maybe that no patient with heart failure will die because of lack of care in this part of the world. That at least as a pass at that. I'm hearing the notion from Gary, without any specifics on it, that you need to have some meaningful objectives or goals, some very clear, specific end results in mind. I'm hearing less about something that I thought I might hear more about, and I'll bet there's more to come on this, and that would be what I might call attentive leadership, which often is called champions. Really at all levels is where that needs to occur. But when Adam was talking about the HEAPP program, I heard some of that, though in fact you also were talking about the notion of teaching the teachers, and the whole point being that if you're going to have successful collaboration, you've got to have the skills and the tools. So we need to make sure people have the tools to take this forward. We need to have a welcoming environment that builds friendships, and Dr. Jalaluddin spoke of with this, I guess, a veterinary group, that they didn't have anything of this sort, and you needed to bring them together and build friendships and work out from there. Certainly the willing teamwork that Felicia Zimmerman spoke of with these 8 people, only 3 of whom were going to get to the ultimate goal of each of the individuals there. I'm wondering, of the 4 who lived in the house, are they looking for parts of the one that didn't make it here? Because only 3 made it, but I'm not sure of that. But the fact is, they realize that if we don't pull together and we don't work together, then none of us are going to achieve what we want to, and certainly not in the bigger sense of it. And that's always a challenge, and one of the reasons why, as a leader of an organization, sometimes you need to make some changes in your team, because you get some people that are so focused on themselves they aren't willing to make the needed changes. Another one, though, that I don't see here so much, maybe in Adam's thought, would be regular interaction is another piece of this whole thing. An opportunity to reaffirm commitment, to renew friendship, and to exchange new learning that may have occurred along the way. So I'll just toss those thoughts out there. Does that trigger any thoughts, particularly on vision? What
Yeah.
other visions? Yes. Here.
I just wrote there, you know that you can't succeed, in any cooperative program without shared vision. This is not possible. When I use the example when we formed the Asia Australasia Association of Animal Protection Societies, I was a young man, I had to go to Japan, convince the old professors, that there's something good if we work together. Australia, they are far more senior than I was then, But eventually, because of the shared vision, the common belief that if we pull together resources, we work together, we tend to benefit. There's always there. It doesn't. In this case, everyone benefit. That's why it works. Because I think earlier it was stated that unless the initiative benefit both sides or multiple parties, it will be doomed. It cannot succeed. If there are ulterior motive, if there's no common interest, to promote goodwill, I think it will not work. So, in other words, the idea has to be pure and very sincere. The honesty has to be beyond doubt. So, if university were to cooperate, I think the key is that how sincere are we? Are we honest to ourselves? Because if you can't trust your partner, then you cannot succeed. This is because I work a lot. I use that as an example. When I came back from London, I was a young, 25 years old, went on to do teaching. But to train new PhD graduates, I couldn't do it alone, In Malaysia then had only one university. Over now we have 50 over, So I had to work with partners in England. We had to raise money. And that, I think, in a way, is an international cooperation, So if you have a common vision, if we are honest to ourselves, I think we will succeed. Thank you.
Adam, and in terms of the leadership side, were there particular people or anecdotes you can share on someone stepping up and taking the lead, and I would always argue you don't always need a leader, but you need leadership. There may have been a number of individuals, all with different roles.
Sure. And speaking to the last comment we heard, it does take someone to drive a process forward. And actually, for our project, the leader was the country director for the Intel Corporation. Mostly because they were having a big problem finding the type of engineers that they need down in the southern region of Vietnam, but also because their company has a worldwide effort on developing educational programs. And so he had the buy-in from his own corporate base back in California. And they put in over $1.5 million into this, and he stepped up and led the effort to then get more companies involved, to get more universities involved, and to drive this. And it's something that, while some people might not think is one of the core responsibilities of his job running that company, this is something that he decided to take on and spend a lot of his own personal time on. And so I would credit our Intel guy as the person that really provided the leadership to move this effort forward. And once that credibility was established, other people came in and turned it into a successful project.
Felicia, anybody in your team that seemed to be the one to be the glue? Perhaps yourself?
Yes, I was actually the glue that helped bring the team together, and I made sure that I was an example for other people. Although you do have to incentivize individuals to be part of the program. But the most important thing was similar to, actually in fencing specifically, as in a lot of technology companies, everyone has a secret sauce. So in fencing, every country seems as though that they have something special about what they do. But to be honest, you see them out there and you see them competing, and it's out in the open. And it's getting over that block of fear of having your secrets exposed. So it's about getting over that and coming together. When we had all the women training together, each of us were from different clubs around the country. And then we started inviting people from other countries to come. Romania, we had the Chinese team come in for a little while because we wanted to learn from them, but they also had the benefit from learning with us. So you need to understand the individual benefit as well as the group.
Mm-hmm. Anyone want to jump in?
In listening, and again, going back to our experience just in this local upstate New York region, as a leader, I suppose, for myself, I did that, but I think one thing I heard recently was good leaders choose people to work with them that are better and smarter than they are. So I definitely did that. So the people that I work with, the team that we've assembled to operate this big program is really far more important than any one leader, I'd say, in that respect. And so we had the really good people. And we did have a vision, we did have a plan, we still have a plan that we follow through even to this day, and we touch upon it all the time with outreach and education, and I think it's a constant, even if you succeed, there's no resting on your laurels because the world moves very fast, and that idea that we don't want anybody to lose the opportunity to get the kind of healthcare that we would be able to offer them if they wish to be offered to them is important, because in the end, we're talking about human life, and it's important that we do our best, which I think we try to do.
Max?
Yes, leadership, of course, is very important when it comes to collaboration, stimulating collaboration. I think there's three different types of collaboration that are important. It's in research. It's cross disciplines, cross culture, and across the boundaries of the university, so with local business, with international business. Those three types of research collaboration are, as research has shown, good, beneficial to all partners. So leaders should stimulate these ways of these collaborations. And the efforts, of course, must come from the researchers themselves. But that doesn't mean that there is no leadership involved. There's a lot of leadership involved. First of all, you must express that this is a good thing. You must make champions of the people that really do these kinds of things and reward them and show the ones that don't do this that the people that are into these collaborations are more successful, are better at what they do, and I think it's clearly the way forward for research to work with other people outside the institute. And yes, leadership is a very important part of stimulating this and creating the environment where people feel safe to do this and feel that they can go outside to create excellent research.
While we talk about leadership, I think Dr. Chang has rightly said so, that a good leader is someone who knows how to utilize the talent of other people. In any, when we talk of university, we cannot run away from research because a strong research team will be able to build bigger research projects. To do this, you can't do it alone. This is why it calls for high quality leadership in in research. Because a good leader in research will be able to develop, not only national project but also international project. And it is something, or rather, you cannot find so many top leaders who have the skill to work with many, and to be able to identify the gaps in research is also called for high quality leadership, and also to manage teams at national and international level. I think the way forward is to be able to build bridges in research on a bigger scale. And you have to identify those leaders that have the capacity to manage the various teams within his jurisdiction.
Gary, do you want to say some more about some of the specific objectives and some of the programs you've been in charge of, or other
We were
things?
very fortunate in that our president at Keuka, through his leadership, established what we call strategic vectors. As we look to transform our university into something other than a more traditional liberal arts undergraduate institution of the past to a more modern institution with a more international focus, we set about, with Dr. Burke's leadership, establishing what we call strategic vectors. We will be serving students in adult education. We will be serving students in international settings. We will be growing our research and graduate programs. So whatever the strategic vector was, we had clear vision from our leadership on that. But more importantly, I think the leadership developed good followership, because that's the other component of effective leaders. You have to have effective followers. And as Max mentioned or alluded to earlier, I think part of this is empowering those champions to take on these projects and these initiatives, encouraging them to accept a reasonable amount of risk related to that initiative, and allowing them a safe environment where if they do fail or there is a minor setback, that is not catastrophic to the project or the individual. Because if we are to encourage our colleagues to take risks, the element of failure has to be taken into consideration, and not punished, but rather rewarded in terms of we learn from our failures, or we learn from our shortcomings. So I think that strategic vision coupled with good followership, coupled with risk-taking, those are important elements that we've, I believe, mastered at Keuka in terms of following through on our initiatives.
What about more on the welcoming environment? Because here we are in an organization of, if you will, volunteers. I don't think there's anyone who has to be here. There are no orders that people need to participate in ASAIHL, but there's something that draws you together. What are some of the things that our panel has experienced and or others vis-a-vis making the environment welcome so people want to be part of these activities? Anyone want to speak to that?
Well, I think part of it, I look at things that I attend or don't attend in my own life. Part of it is a feeling that people are going to go to something where there's some expertise on what's important to them. Mm-hmm. And if people are coming to look at how to improve or new ideas, in my own experience, I meet twice a year with my colleagues from all throughout Asia for the simple purpose that we learn from each other, and we all walk away with something that when we get back home is going to make everyone else think we're really smart. And it's something that we don't have to recreate the wheel. It's something that we don't have to think of ourselves. You have a lot of people in a lot of places that are doing things that are in a similar realm, and if you can find those people and collaborate with them, then you can improve what you're doing and make yourself more effective and your organization more effective.
Mm-hmm. Picking up on the thought I had earlier when I said that consortia do those things together, that they can do better together than alone, and certainly they learn from each other. And tying into our wonderful keynote address this morning from Jeffrey Lehman when he talked about bridge builders and so forth, and what do bridge builders do? They help people to see things with fresh eyes. Rosabeth Moss Cantor called that kaleidoscopic thinking. If you think of the kaleidoscope, you turn it, and as you turn it, the patterns change. And she pointed out that what she called change masters, change masters are kaleidoscopic thinkers. They're always talking to people different from themselves and learning from them and seeing different patterns because of that. Other thoughts on that? On building a welcoming environment.
What? Talking about bridges? What Dr. Lemon was saying this morning? You saying other thought on what?
Jeffrey?
Yeah, you're saying other thought on what?
We're talking right now on a welcoming environment, and building a welcoming environment.
I think that, obviously everyone here who flew 18 or 20 hours, you must have a passion for what you do. And I know in our team, there's always the people who have the passion, who come in on weekends, who stay late, who are always the first to volunteer. And it's not to say that the other members of our team who aren't that way, because there's a lot of competing issues, family, work-life balance, etc. But I know for us, to be successful, I need on our team enough of a balance of individuals who are willing to go that extra mile, and that's maybe it's a personality flaw, but those are the people that we do seek out who come and be very productive members of our team. Doesn't have to be everybody, but you have to have enough critical mass to succeed.
Other keys to successful collaboration, cooperation. Anyone?
I think maybe also from the Felicia's remarks on sports, I think you see in research nowadays, it's not, if you could compare it to sports, it's not so much tennis, it's more football, that it's really a team sport, as you can say. And what you see in team sports like football is that there's a very huge importance of the coach. The coach is not in the field, the coach is nothing without the great players. But of course, the coach can do a lot to create the team, to build the team, to make sure that everybody puts their back to it. And I think that's the role that university managers also have, that using the best people in the best roles that they can have, motivating in all kinds of ways, measuring their performance and sort of feeding back how the performance has been. I think that's what university management can do, and that I think also goes for collaborations. That's something that's a worthy cause. It creates better science, better results. So that's something that we should all go for, I suppose. And yes, I think leadership can influence this a lot.
I think we have a couple of minutes left. I think we should try to focus on how we can promote university cooperation. I think that's the theme for this conference. And I can say that it is not an easy task. We need strong leadership, among the various universities to forge ahead this agenda of building bridges. I don't think many of us even understand what are the issues that we are facing. As we were saying this morning, that if you look, I'm going to have a slight deviation. If we grew up, in the days, in the 60s, in the universities, so in that sense, I'm a little ancient, So in those days, there was a lot of ideological differences, So students, the campuses were very vocal, They had the conscience to speak aloud, They brought issues, to the street. But today, what happened? The world is no safer place to live in. In fact, it's worse off. And what happened in the campuses? They're all silent, So, because they cannot comprehend what is going on, what is the problem. So the ideological issue is gone. Today is a cultural issue. And this is where we are not able to comprehend, fully appreciate what do they mean. By we say in generic term culture, what is it? How do we identify the cultural problem? We did, Dr. Lemon raised, or he spoke very eloquently this morning, And I think we use that paper as some kind of basis to move ahead. But who is going to take on from here? You know? I was just toying with the idea that perhaps we should have a Buffalo Declaration, you know, as a first step to move ahead to create that bridge. I know you've got a long bridge here across the river between Canada and USA, but I think it's a good first step if we can have a Buffalo Declaration. And I think if we have that as a first step, leaders will emerge. You know. So we just create a spark, we create a catalyst. So this is also important. Surely there will be leaders who will understand the vision, you know, the purpose of what we're trying to do. And I don't think this is something we can disappoint somebody, you know. Leadership must come naturally, you know. They must have the passion, you know, and the integrity to take on such an issue. You know. So I would imagine that, you know, if we can spend some time, see how it is not a simple thing, but believe me, but to get universities to come together, even within the university, you've got many ideas, and I don't think everybody agree with the president, you know, all the time, but yet a good leader will be able to move ahead despite all the challenges that he or she faces. Thank you.
So what are we missing? Now, what we've talked about so far is a clear vision, meaningful objectives, clear, specific end results, attentive leadership with champions at all levels, so it isn't just a single boss, if you will. An environment, a welcoming environment that builds friendships, and a willingness of people to be part of the team. Regular interaction among the participants to renew friendship, reaffirm commitment, enhance understanding, and as Adam pointed out, people want to learn. And then skills and tools. What else? Anyone here have a thought on your own experience that can add to this little sub-list we've got started here?
All I would,
Gary?
all I'd like to add, perseverance. I think anytime you pursue these kinds of collaborations, you have to have a very strong sense of perseverance because of not only the cultural differences, but often the bureaucratic challenges, the home campus, stakeholder constituencies. There are so many challenges to overcome that that strong leadership has to encourage perseverance through the entire process.
Yeah, you think of Winston Churchill, who always said, never give up, never give up, never ever give up. And when he was finally beaten as prime minister, one of his friends came up and said, Sir Winston, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. And he said, well then the blessing is perfect. The disguise is perfect. Yeah, core values are you could call them standards of desirability, if you will, and one way to think of them is if somebody came up and let's say you're in a for-profit business and said, you know, your values are killing you, they're just killing you in the marketplace, and you'd say, well, that's too bad. Those are our values, and so on. And indeed, core values are the glue that holds people together very often. And again, going back to Felicia when she talked about there were at least two values in the reference she shared. There are 8 people who value the competition and wanted to take it to the highest level, but also just as important was the value of supporting each other. I heard.
Right. You know, they have a saying 1 + 1 = 3, at least we do here at Xerox. I think just to play off of what you said, is another importance is to set the groundwork in the very beginning. So I'm the Director of Global Bid Management for Xerox, and we have 4 major regions that we interact with. We meet on a quarterly basis, but the most important one is when we get a chance to meet face to face. That, out of anything, is really a very important segment of what we do, because that's really where you can interact. I mean, when you're over the phone, you might be busy checking your email or whatnot, but when you get together and you're face to face, you come into contact with cultural differences, you come into contact with, you can relate in a more human way, and you can bring together a better understanding. So we do video conferences, but really it's when we get together face to face that we get the 1 + 1 = 3.
So what kind of structure will work best to make it a successful partnership in our organizations, okay?
I'll just share some of our experience at Keuka has been, to use the cliche, the devil is in the detail. And, you know, it's important to have that relationship at the senior level between your institutions, but you really need operational people on the ground. So our faculty and our program administration really has to work closely on the ground with our partners, whether it be face-to-face or via international communications technology. But that communication has to be frequent, it has to be prompt, especially with time differences. We find ourselves, our faculty and administrators who work in international settings are typically working around the clock. And those people have to be passionate about what they do, they have to be dedicated, because oftentimes an answer can't wait 24 hours. It has to be immediate. So my advice is that you have dedicated operational people who can be on the ground part of the time, if not most of the time, and very good communication that is very prompt.
I'd like to add, maybe adding in balance. I mean, if you look at these like you would any joint venture, sometimes the reason that these things fall apart is when one side is fulfilling their end of the agreement and the other side is not and is sitting around. And for these collaborations and alliances to really work, people on both sides and in all parties have to do what they say they're going to do, so everyone can efficiently get the most out of it.
Jump in. Max?
Yeah, being open about your goals, I think, is the first step. If you really want to achieve something, state it out loud, make sure everybody knows what the desired outcome is. That's number one. And of course, you break this great objective into smaller ones and ones that can be managed. There's many things you can do, and communication, I think, is key. It's one of the most important things. Of course, you need to enable people by giving them the right tools, making sure there's travel budget, making sure that, I don't know, every year there's something organized for those great champions and all that stuff. But it's, I think, communication, being open about what's important, what the objectives are, is, I think, one of, when you talk about the 80-20 rule, that's a very important element of leadership.
Well, there's a truism in planning, and that's that you're better off with a bad plan well executed than you are with a brilliant plan poorly executed. And I think that's underlying your thought there. And again, part of why you need attentive leadership to keep people focused in, why you need to have as well, an execution plan, if you will.
I agree totally with that one. Sometimes it's better to get a used idea from a different industry and use it in your own and adapt it to your own needs and create something that's maybe not really what you need. So, yeah.
Anything else from anyone
Maybe
here?
there's one thing that I can add to this communication thing that I just thought, because of course communication is key and it's very important, but don't forget, and that's something very close to your executed plan. I think it's very important that you use professional tools. If you go to an MBA and you learn about business administration, you learn about many things that help you manage a business. It's probably good to know that there are many tools now that you can use to manage your university. And not just from Elsevier, but there's a whole market now for all kinds of stuff that you can use to measure your process, to make it better, to improve it, and keep improving it. And I think that's one of the things that you always need to do. I think that's even something that we inherited from the Asian way of doing business. You're never done improving your process, and that's something that goes for research management as well.
Dr. Chen, any last words here? No, that's the wrong word to use to a person in your work, but
We never give up.
Before he
We
open
can-
up,
We can do more. No, I'm just very struck this whole meeting that these themes that apply obviously at the university level, but, to everything we do in the hospital on a day-to-day basis, that collaboration and, integrity and, it's very common. I'm just very pleased to see that. I'm learning a lot to take back and get back to work on continuously improving what we do.
Dr. Jalaluddin?
If we can find leaders by the roadside, we would not have this problem today. See, leaders are scarce, and we cannot assume that everyone emerge as leaders, because they got 3 PhDs also. I think from my own working experience, you got to encourage those who have the potential to grow into leadership, to play leadership role. So you have to nurture them, and the art nurturing leadership is not simple. First of all, you need to be respected by them, but I think if you do not encourage, you don't identify leaders, then there will be nobody to take over our role, and some people like it their way, so no one replaces them, I just want, before I stop, I want to say one thing, When I was the president of the university, I thought professors were very happy when I came up with new ideas, Then there was silence, And years later, I only learned that nobody wants to know about anything new, They mean hard work, So, I think from there you can pick up. The people who are enthusiastic, they are the ones who have the leadership potential. Believe me, if you give me a CV and and you can just look at the CV and you know immediately whether this individual has some leadership ability. Because if you have not done anything in 20 years, there's no likelihood that you're going to achieve in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Alicia, anything?
So we heard a lot about leadership, and I wanted to kind of add on to what Gary said actually about risk-taking. And that's a very important aspect, is the ability to fail or take a risk and fail and learn from it. And I think that's often misunderstood, that if the group comes together and they are failing or they're not able to communicate, it's a great tool to learn and even improve more upon the group. So we used to say in sport, sometimes I have to take one step back or take one touch to get 3 more. And often I find I learn the most when I'm not always succeeding. So sometimes when I'm not reaching the goal, what did I do? What can I tweak? And if you look at it in a more holistic way, how can we come together?
I think your group house would have made a wonderful reality TV show of 4 people living together for 3 spots on the team. But,
All with weapons.
yes, yeah, with that exact answer. I'll be brief. I think it's wonderful that people come to conferences like this to see their colleagues from around, and so continue to network and seek for new ideas in new places.
I would just like to echo some of the comments made earlier today by Brother in his opening comments about being bold and understanding what your goals are and not being afraid to reach out into different areas. Many times institutions look for themselves in their partners, and perhaps that is the wrong strategy. They should be looking for diversity in partnerships, because that is what will enrich the partnership and help them to learn from partners who are different and specialize in different areas than themselves. So I think there's a call for both leadership and higher education today that we need to respond to more often.
So, here are the points that I've scribbled down as we've gone through this, in terms of identifying attributes of developing and sustaining successful partnerships, because when Dr. Burke asked you to stand up and look at each other today, every one of those was related to a potential partnership, be it for faculty development, for faculty exchange, for student exchange, and so forth. But the notion of a vision or strategic intent, meaningful, clear, specific objectives, attentive leadership with champions at all levels, the bridge builders, a welcoming environment that people want to be part of, willingness for teamwork, willing teamwork, regular interaction leading to renewal of friendship, reaffirmation of commitment, enhanced understanding, exchanging new learning, and then a point that came in as well on rewarding people, recognizing people for the contributions to the team, if you will. Then we heard about perseverance. We heard about execution, measurement and execution, measurement, and of course course correction. And one other word that popped up that is always critical to any successful organization, and that's passion. And indeed, if ASAIHL, if you remain passionate about this organization and passionate about the partnerships that you're developing, that'll overcome an awful lot of challenges and problems and bumps in the road, I think.